Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to untangle this whole world of clustering techniques and data pre-processing.
Sounds fun.
We've got all these research papers here
Wow.
on like financial markets, web usage, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're going to uncover how these techniques work, right?
Right.
Where they're good, where they're not so good,
Mm-hmm.
and what are people still trying to figure out?
Oh, that's great.
About-
Yeah, it's fascinating how these techniques are used for all these different problems, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about understanding how the stock market works,
Well, yeah.
predicting what people will do on a website, even spotting like weird things in data streams as they come in real time.
Okay, well, let's talk about the stock market example you mentioned.
Okay.
This 2014 paper by Aga Bazorgi
Uh-huh.
really caught my eye.
Yeah.
They were talking about co-movement and stock markets.
Right.
And this whole idea that like even stocks in different industries can kind of move together in these like predictable ways.
Yeah, and what's really cool is if we can like accurately cluster stocks based on those co-movement patterns,
Yeah.
we might be able to predict what prices are going to do in the future.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine having this edge in the market
Yeah,
just by knowing like which stocks are always moving together.
that's the dream.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's harder to cluster like that stock data than other data.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Time series data is
Mm-hmm.
it's just trickier.
Yeah.
It's often really high dimensional, lots of noise.
Yeah.
And what's important is to capture similarity in the shape of the data over time,
Mm-hmm.
not just like at one point in a time.
So it's not like are two stocks at the same price today, but are they kind of moving the same over time?
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. So that's why you need these special techniques to deal with that data.
Yeah.
Like Aga Bazorgi, and they propose this three-phase clustering model,
Oh,
or 3PTC,
okay.
as a more accurate and like scalable solution.
3 phases. What's that?
So the first phase uses low-resolution data
Okay.
for a rough grouping, like a first pass.
Yeah.
Then the second phase, it zooms in,
Mhm.
refining those initial clusters into smaller, more precise subgroups.
Okay.
And finally, it merges those subgroups in the third phase
Okay.
to create the final clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole multi-resolution approach means it can handle huge data sets.
Right.
And importantly, it finds clusters based on that shape similarity.
Okay, so I see how that's good for like stock market analysis.
Right.
But
Yeah.
before we get too deep into those algorithms, I want to talk about data pre-processing
Oh, yeah, for sure.
because it seems like that's super important.
Yeah, it's like prepping your ingredients before you cook, you know?
Right.
In another paper, Aga Bazorgi and al., they applied these concepts to web usage mining, talking
Yeah.
about transaction identification.
Transaction identification. What's that?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
You're trying to understand what users are doing on a website, right?
Oh.
Each click, each page view, it's like a tiny piece of a puzzle.
Oh.
Transaction identification helps you group those little actions into meaningful transactions,
Okay.
like a user's whole journey through the website.
So you're not just looking at each click by itself, you're looking at the whole flow.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And they represent this user behavior using a usage matrix, which then goes into the clustering algorithms.
Okay.
But the important thing here is that choosing the right pre-processing techniques is key.
Yeah.
Whether it's transaction identification, dealing with missing values, or normalizing the data, it all depends on the data you're working with.
So data pre-processing is like transforming the raw data into something the algorithms can actually understand.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the key techniques they use for pre-processing, especially with this time series data?
Well, one common challenge with time series data is missing values.
Right?
There are all sorts of ways to fill those gaps.
Yeah.
But you have to choose carefully, or you might introduce bias.
Okay, how do you decide which way is best?
Sometimes a simple approach, like using the mean or median of the values around it, works.
Okay.
But sometimes you need a more sophisticated, like model-based approach where you use a statistical model to actually predict what those missing values should be.
So you're using the patterns in the data to make good guesses about what goes to the blanks.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Another crucial technique is smoothing,
Okay.
which helps reduce noise and highlight the underlying trends. There are a bunch of different algorithms for that, like moving averages or exponential smoothing, each with their own pros and cons.
That makes sense, especially with financial data, like you said, where those daily ups and downs
Right.
can really obscure the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
And then there's normalization,
Oh, yeah.
which ensures all your data is on the same scale.
Right.
This is really important when you have multiple time series with different ranges.
Okay.
Like comparing a stock trading at $10 a share to one trading at $1,000 a share.
Right, right,
You want to see the relative movements,
right,
not just the raw price differences.
right.
Normalization helps you compare apples to apples, so to speak.
Perfect. So we've got imputation for missing values,
Right.
smoothing for the noise reduction,
Yeah.
normalization for scaling the data.
Mm-hmm.
But what about feature selection?
Oh, absolutely.
Does that play a role?
Yeah, feature selection is all about figuring out which features in your data are the most important and
Yeah.
informative.
Mm-hmm.
This is really important with time series data, which can have a ton of features.
So too many features can make it harder for the algorithms.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that can even lead to inaccurate results.
Got it.
There are lots of methods for feature selection, from simple statistical tests to more sophisticated machine learning approaches.
So it sounds like picking the right pre-processing techniques is an art in itself.
It really is. It requires a deep understanding of the data, the algorithms, and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It's like a chef knowing which spices to use to make the dish taste best.
Right. Now, you mentioned k-means a few times,
Yeah.
which is a popular clustering algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
But this 2009 paper also talking about fuzzy clustering,
Right.
specifically fuzzy c-means.
Yep.
Is that like an alternative to k-means?
It can be,
Okay.
especially when your data has outliers.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional k-means assigns each data point to one cluster.
Yeah.
But fuzzy clustering, it assigns degrees of membership.
Okay.
It's like saying this stock has an 80% chance of belonging to this cluster, but also a 20% chance of belonging to another.
So it's more flexual, it's not so black and white.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings us to another challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Clustering data streams that are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Right. But isn't most data like that these days?
Yeah, pretty much.
Social media feeds, financial markets, it's all changing.
It is. That's why we need algorithms that can adapt.
Yeah.
The Muddy Stream algorithm developed by Amini et al. In 2016
Okay.
is a good example.
Yeah.
It uses these core mini clusters,
Yeah.
which are like compact summaries of the data
Okay.
to keep up with all the new information coming in.
So it's like this mini map that's always updating.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Cool.
It also uses a grid-based outlier buffer
Uh-huh.
to deal with noise and situations where the data has multiple densities.
Okay.
And then there's an offline phrase
Yeah.
where it analyzes those core mini clusters to come up with the final clusters.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah,
But how do we even know if the algorithm is doing a good job?
right.
Whether it's k-means, fuzzy clustering, or money stream,
Mm-hmm.
evaluating that seems tricky.
Yeah, evaluation is key, but it can be challenging.
Yeah.
The Zhang et al. Paper from 2006 really dives into this issue.
Okay, so how do we measure if our clusters are actually meaningful?
There are internal evaluation metrics like
Mhm.
cluster purity or the sum of squared errors or SSE,
Yeah.
which basically tells you how well the data fits into the clusters.
Okay.
And then there are external evaluation metrics where
Mm.
you compare your results to like a known standard,
Okay.
like labeled data sets where you already know what the grouping should be.
Okay, are there places to get those labeled data sets?
Oh yeah, the 2011 UCR Time Series Data Mining Archive by Keogh et al. Is a great resource.
Okay, awesome.
And it's like a gold mine for researchers.
Okay, speaking of benchmarks, let's talk about anomaly detection.
Okay.
It's another big application of clustering.
Right.
With all this big data and the Internet of Things, spotting weird events as they happen is more important than ever.
Absolutely. But the problem is
Yeah.
the traditional ways of detecting anomalies weren't built for today's massive data streams.
Right.
They just can't keep up.
So what are people doing to fix that?
Well, Arieler Habib et al. Published some really interesting papers in 2019 and 2022 on this very topic.
Oh, cool. What did they find?
They basically said we need these hybrid approaches
Okay.
that combine machine learning algorithms with big data technologies,
Yeah.
like Spark streaming for real-time processing and HBase for storing everything.
Right.
In their 2022 paper, they propose a new approach based on clustering
Oh.
using something called core set clustering.
Core set clustering. What's that?
It's a way to summarize huge data sets efficiently by finding a smaller set of data points that represent the whole thing.
So it's like a super condensed version of the data.
Exactly. And if
Okay.
you combine that with sliding window techniques,
Yeah.
you can process data in real time, which is really important for anomaly detection.
Right.
They call their algorithm SSWLLFCC, which stands for Streaming Sliding Window Local Outlier Factor Core Set Clustering.
Oh, wow.
Quite a mouthful.
SSWFAFCC. I'll have to practice that one.
Yeah.
But I get how the pieces fit together now.
Yeah.
The core sets for managing all that data,
Right.
sliding windows for the real-time processing. And the local outlier factor for spotting those anomalies.
You got it.
Awesome.
They even used the adjusted RAND index to evaluate their algorithm's accuracy, and they found it was way more effective than the old ways.
So they're not just proposing something new, they're actually showing it works.
Exactly.
But what I find really exciting is how these clustering techniques are now being used with other really advanced technologies.
Yeah.
This 2024 paper by Kang et al. Really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah.
They talks about combining streaming algorithms and k-means clustering with retrieval augmented generation,
Right.
or RAG.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool technique used in natural language processing.
Yeah, it's amazing how versatile these techniques are.
Yeah.
RAG is fascinating. It lets these big language models, like the ones that power chatbots,
Right.
access and retrieve information for outside sources,
Okay.
which makes them smarter and more accurate.
So instead of just using their own knowledge,
Right.
they can tap into this huge library of outside information.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
And that means they can give you more relevant responses.
Okay.
So what Kang et al. Found was that by combining streaming algorithms and k-means clustering into RAG,
Yeah.
they could reduce how much memory it uses
Okay.
while making it more accurate.
Wait, so they're using those streaming algorithms and clustering to make this NLP technique better?
That's right.
Wow.
It really highlights that these clustering techniques aren't just for finance or web usage. They can be used to improve all kinds of data-driven systems.
That's amazing. It seems like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with all of this.
We really are. And as we get more and more data, being able to find those insights is going to become even more crucial.
This is why I love doing these deep dives. We start with one concept,
Right.
and it just unfolds into this huge web of knowledge.
It does.
It's really cool.
It's fascinating.
So we've talked about a lot, from the challenges of working with time series data to how cool algorithms like MoodyStream are,
Right.
and how important data pre-processing is.
It's all connected.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
where is the research still falling short?
Ooh.
Like, what are those big open questions that researchers are working on?
That's a question I'm always thinking about.
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about all the things we still don't know in this field.
Yeah, so what are those research frontiers?
Well,
What knowledge gaps are still waiting to be filled?
okay, so one area where researchers are really pushing the boundaries is in developing these clustering algorithms that can handle noise and outliers better.
Oh, okay.
Many of the traditional algorithms are really sensitive to those things, and that can really mess up the results.
Especially in the real world, where perfectly clean data is like a fantasy.
It is. It is.
So researchers are trying to make algorithms that can deal with messy data
Exactly.
without getting thrown off track.
Right. Another big area of research is developing algorithms that can handle concept drift.
Oh, right.
Remember how we were talking about data streams constantly changing?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes those changes aren't random.
Okay.
They actually represent fundamental shifts in the underlying patterns.
So the data is changing, but the rules of the game are changing too.
Right, exactly.
That sounds tough.
It is,
Yeah.
and that's where concept drift comes in.
Okay.
Imagine you're analyzing customer purchasing behavior on a website,
Mm-hmm.
a sudden economic downturn, or a new competitor coming in.
Right.
Could totally change those patterns.
Yeah.
Algorithms that can't adapt to that will give you bad results.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got robustness to noise and outliers.
Right.
And handling concept drift.
Mhm.
Those are two big ones.
Yep.
Anything else keeping those data scientists up all night?
Well, scalability is always a concern.
Right.
As we get more and more data,
Yeah.
we need algorithms that can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Many traditional clustering algorithms work great for small data sets,
Yeah.
but they just don't work when you have millions or billions of data points.
So it's not just finding the clusters, it's doing it efficiently.
Exactly, especially for those real-time applications where you need answers fast.
Right. Right.
And then there's the whole issue of interpretability.
Okay.
It's one thing to have an algorithm spit out some clusters,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to understand what they mean
Right.
and how to use them to make decisions.
It's like a black box giving you an answer but no explanation.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So there's a lot of focus on developing algorithms that are accurate,
Mm-hmm.
but also give you insights into why they form those clusters.
Oh, that's cool.
Things like visualization and feature importance analysis can help make those results more clear and useful.
So it's about making those results more transparent and actionable.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, what about applying these techniques to new areas?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a research frontier as well?
Absolutely. There's a ton of exciting work going on, applying clustering techniques to bioinformatics, cybersecurity, and social network analysis, to name a few.
Wow.
Each of those areas has its own challenges and opportunities.
So many possibilities.
There are.
Okay, so it sounds like there's no shortage of research avenues to explore.
Yep.
But I'm also curious about the practical side.
Yeah.
For those of us who are using these techniques every day,
Right.
what are some things we should keep in mind?
Well, I think one of the most important thing is to remember that there's no one solution that works for everything.
Okay.
The best approach depends on your data, your goals, and your resources.
So it's not about grabbing the newest algorithm,
No.
but about understanding what you're working with and what you want to get out of it.
Exactly, and that's why data pre-processing is so vital. It's
Yeah.
not just some boring task.
Right.
It can make or break your analysis.
Yeah.
Choosing the right pre-processing techniques can really affect your results.
Okay.
It's like laying the foundation for a building.
Yeah.
If the foundation is weak, the whole thing falls apart.
Makes sense.
And just like there are different tools for different jobs in construction, there are different clustering algorithms for different types of data.
Right.
And might be great for lots of things, but
Mhm.
fuzzy clustering might be better when you have outliers.
Okay.
And for streaming data, you'll need something like MutiStream
Right.
that can handle how dynamic it is.
And like we talked about before, evaluation is key.
Absolutely.
You can't just run an algorithm and assume it's working.
Nope.
You need to actually look at the results and see if they make sense.
Right.
Right.
Don't be afraid to try different things.
Mhm.
There's rarely one right answer in data analysis.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works best for your problem.
Yeah.
And that might involve experimenting a bit.
So be curious.
Yes.
Try different things. Keep learning.
Those are the keys.
Those are good ingredients for success in this field.
They are. They are.
And it's important to remember that this field is always changing.
Right.
New algorithms, new pre-processing techniques, new applications. So it's not just about learning the tools we have now,
Right.
but being open to new things.
Exactly.
Lifelong learning is a must.
It is. It is.
Awesome.
That's the beauty of it. It keeps things interesting.
You know, as we've been talking about all this,
Yeah.
it struck me that there are some interesting connections to how our own brains work.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, our brains are always taking in information, trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we do that is by clustering,
Right.
grouping similar things together.
Right.
You know, we group objects based on their shape, their color, how they work. We group people based on their interests, their beliefs.
Right.
It's how we organize and understand the world.
That's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
And you're right. There are definitely parallels. Our brains are like these super complex clustering machines,
Yeah.
constantly processing information and building models of the world.
And like the algorithms we've been talking about,
Yeah.
our brains have to deal with noise, outliers, concept drift.
Right.
We're always learning new things that challenge how we think about things.
It's a never-ending process.
It is.
It's just like researchers are working to make algorithms better.
Yeah.
Our brains are constantly fine-tuning themselves.
Wow. It really makes you appreciate how complex our brains are
Yeah.
and how far we've come with AI.
Yeah.
But nature is still the best in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Maybe by studying how our brains work, we can make even better algorithms in the future.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But even with our amazing brains,
Right.
we can still learn a lot from these clustering techniques.
Yeah, for sure.
They're powerful tools for exploring data, finding patterns,
Right.
and making new discoveries.
Absolutely.
So we're generating more and more data all the time.
Yeah,
These techniques are going to become even more important.
I agree.
Well, we've explored a lot today.
Yeah.
Time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go,
Yeah.
I have one last question for you.
Oh, I'm ready.
If you had to give one piece of advice for someone just starting out with clustering and data pre-processing, what would it be?
That's a good one.
Yeah?
I think the most important thing is to just be curious and willing to experiment.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to try different things and see what works best for your problem.
Right.
There's just so much to learn in this field, and
Yeah.
you never really stop learning.
That's encouraging. It sounds like a field that really reward curiosity and being able to adapt.
It does.
It's not about finding the one right answer. It's about exploring and discovering new things.
Exactly. And don't forget about collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
Connect with other data scientists, share your experiences, learn from each other.
There's-
There's a whole community out there,
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That's great advice. And, you know, you don't have to be a data scientist to benefit from these techniques.
No, not at all.
Anyone working with data can use them.
Right.
Business analysts, researchers, even just someone who's curious about the world.
Exactly. These techniques can help you find hidden patterns, gain insights,
Yeah.
make better decisions.
And as data becomes more and more important in our lives,
Right.
that ability to understand it is going to be even more valuable.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of clustering and data pre-processing.
It's been my pleasure.
I hope you learned something new, maybe had an aha moment or two,
Yeah,
and gained a new appreciation for just how powerful these techniques can be.
they really are powerful.
So until next time,
Yeah,
happy clustering.
it has been fun.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I always learn so much from these conversations,
Me too.
and I hope our listeners did as well.
I hope so.
So everyone out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one making the next big breakthrough in clustering and data preprocessing.
Yeah, the future is wide open.
Absolutely. Until next time. So 6-7.